Well, to find out what Easter clue is hidden in the meaning of each Sunday, we thought we'd take you to one of Canada's top professors of Christian history. We caught up with Craig Evans, guest lecturing at McMaster Divinity College. So, Dr. Evans, tell us why Sunday is different than all the other days of the week.
Sunday is different for Christians because that was the day on which Jesus was raised from the dead. And remember, Sabbath, Saturday, was important for Jesus and his followers because they're Jewish. So it took something very important to get them to shift their day of rest and worship to another day. It was shifted to Sunday because that was the day Jesus was raised from the dead.
It lingers today in culture, Sunday. Is it connected, or is that way too remote?
Well, no, it lingers today. Our calendar reflects what happened with Jesus. He changed the world. And even though a lot of people don't know that and don't know why, the way we reckon years and dates and the fact that we observe Sunday as a special day, these are the leftovers, you might say, the residual of the event of Jesus.
Why is it that you write in your book that every historian of every stripe believes in the physical evidence that Jesus actually lived?
Oh, the evidence for the actual life of Jesus, the evidence for Jesus' historical person is simply overwhelming. We have all kinds of historical records, even artifacts that relate in some way to him, the Gospels that tell of his existence, Roman historians, Greek historians, many refer to Jesus. So the idea that Jesus is a fiction, he never existed, is really quite absurd.
Okay, why is our memory, or at least our respect of the memory of those first century historians, even ones that are not from the Bible, why is our memory for those historians so weak and non-existent?
Well, I think it's because we don't know much about the past anymore. We don't pay attention to sources. We don't know our history. And I frankly think there's some condescension. We think people long ago weren't very smart and couldn't keep the facts straight and maybe weren't very honest. And I think shame on us. We need to do our homework, and we need to read the sources, and we need to take the ancient historians more seriously.
So why was Jesus a political threat when he lived?
Well, Jesus, of course, criticized the establishment of his day for its many failings. The poor were oppressed. The religious leadership, the ruling priests, were not doing their jobs properly. The laws of Moses were not, in fact, being observed. And Jesus challenged them, and their fear was that large crowds would rally around Jesus and call for change, regime change, and that the ruling priests might find themselves overthrown. And then, of course, the Romans would get involved, and it could turn into a bloody revolt. That frightened them.
And the idea that this is not just a political activator, this is the Son of God. This is God incarnate, walking among the human race 2,000 plus years ago. What evidence do we have for that? This is a divine person, Jesus Christ, part of the Godhead.
Well, the evidence for the divinity of Jesus is seen in many ways, mostly in the great works of power. His contemporaries saw what he did and were astounded and would say things like, "We have never seen anything like this." But of course, the greatest single witness to Jesus' divinity, I believe, is in the resurrection. Jesus is raised from the dead and then tells his followers to preach him and continue God's work of reconciling a lost humanity to a God of love and forgiveness. And for me, I find that very compelling. God was indeed present and at work in Jesus of Nazareth.
Why did Jesus have to die such a bloody death?
Well, Jesus died for the sins of humanity, and death is the penalty for sin. That's a long-standing tradition and story in the Bible, and the Jewish people observed that, of course, when they would sacrifice animals and ask for God's forgiveness for their own sins as a nation and sins as an individual. When Jesus died on the cross, his followers realized, there is the final sacrifice. This will be the last time blood has to be shed for the forgiveness of human sin.
The record that he was buried, that this is death and he's buried, it's over. Do we have any historical record that the Son of God actually physically died?
Well, Jesus certainly died on the cross. I realize there have been some theories bandied about lately that maybe Jesus faked his death, maybe Pontius Pilate helped him. but this is absurd. Serious, credible historians don't think that for a minute. Jesus really died. The Romans knew how to put people to death. Jesus died on the cross, crucified, and most certainly was buried. Jewish law required that. Righteous people, criminals, it didn't matter. Everyone was properly buried. And so I don't think there's any doubt about it. All of our sources either state it or presuppose that Jesus was buried.